So I'm in my room. My computer's turned on in front of me. I've got my microphone here. There's a notepad open. It's got some notes about my podcast. It's time to rewind. Looks like they're open to the 23rd scene of Memento that starts in color at 51 minutes and 20 seconds, with Leonard kicking out the remains of a fire at dawn, and ends at 51 minutes and 7 seconds, with Leonard being chased by Dodd. There's also a Skype window open. Oh, hang on. Who is this?
Do I know you? Oh, yeah, yes, that's right, I do. This is Eric Deutsch, your color minutes co-host.
Well, welcome back as always. And who are you?
I'm Nick Rehak. I've been on a couple episodes and just kind of hanging out in the background.
Of course. So, welcome back. And this is your last week here as we basically finish up this mini Dodd arc, as I kind of like to think of it. And jumping straight into the scene, this is just a brief moment. It's kind of a quiet moment after this big action scene, or these kind of two action scenes that we just finished up on. And one thing that I noticed, which I'm not sure if it's something that maybe they picked up on the day, or if it was something that they added, because it's pretty quiet in the background, but I actually hear some like loud revving cars off in the distance. Did either of you catch that?
I did not.
I did not either.
Yeah, I'm not. I imagine that it was probably something that they just picked up on the day because it is kind of so quiet and far in the background. I just kind of happened to notice it because I was listening with my headphones. But there's not really too much to this scene. It's really, we don't know what's going on at this point with this fire and why he was kind of, and with this, whenever it cuts to him in the car and him yawning, it does give you the impression that he was up all night. And we get this guy honking, and the fact that it happens right after the yawn, like the first time you're watching this, it almost makes you think that maybe he just did something stupid because, like, while driving, like maybe the light, other than the fact that he's moving at this point, but maybe he like accidentally cut somebody off, or he's driving too slow, that somebody's just honking at him because he's driving badly because he's tired.
This really ties in well to the point I made in the last episode about how it's fascinating that he had a blackout in the middle of running and in the middle of the chase with Dodd, because the implication is that it could happen while he's driving. Talk about something that could be very dangerous. He could be doing 65 miles an hour on a highway and suddenly have his memory snap out. And if he's not always making sure to drive with two hands on the wheel, and if he hasn't trained himself with the muscle memory to always, if he's driving and he snaps out of it, to always just look straight ahead or immediately pull over to the shoulder or something like that, it could have some pretty big problems. So it's something that possibly has happened to him in the past.
I don't think that it would be something that where he would be driving dangerously if he lost memory. I get the impression that he would just forget where he's going, and he would still maintain like the consistent speed. I think that the one thing that could be dangerous is if there's not a lot of speed limit signs, that maybe he could be going a lot faster than he should in an area just because he doesn't remember what the last speed limit sign said.
Then he gets pulled over by a cop. Do you know why I pulled you over? No. Do you know how fast you were going just now? Zero idea, officer.
Yeah, you say, have I told you about Sammy Chinkus?
Officer, I'd like to file a report.
And again, like I mentioned in last week, it does, the yawn makes sense whenever you know that the whole story, that he's he did stay up most of the night. And one thing that I think is funny that, the last two scenes are my two favorite scenes in this movie. I will say that this scene is my least favorite scene in the movie. I think just the way that it's cut, the way that it's paced, I think, I'm spoiled on action movies and their quick cuts, that just the way that this is edited and paced with the two cars pulling up and Leonard looking out the window and saying, what the F? And then Dodd pulls out the gun and then Leonard peels out. It just feels, to me, it feels very slow and very awkward. Like, do either of you get that impression?
It definitely feels awkward, and it feels kind of forced at the same time. They're like, all right, we need a reason for these two to kind of have a conflict. How do we kick it off? And then they have the idea, but the execution just isn't there.
Yeah, and I think I also feel like just the way that it's presented, it's like beat, 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 beat. But the way that Dodd pulls out his gun, you would think, like, I feel like, again, going to like the action movie, you would expect that he would pull the gun and immediately shoot. But instead he pulls the gun and doesn't do anything. And then we have two more shots and then he just follows him.
Yeah, and not only that, but he's pointing the gun at him with both of the windows closed. I mean, I'm not an expert in firearms, but it seems to me that if you're really going to threaten someone, shooting through two closed glass windows, there's got to be a high probability that bullet's not going to do what it is you want it to do.
Maybe maybe he has an older model car, because this was 2000. Maybe he's got like an early 90s model, and it doesn't have electric windows.
Just hold on a second. He's got to lean over and anchor, I guess. But not only that, if he goes firing off a gun like that, I mean, it's going to blow his ears out. Like, that's going to be so loud in such an enclosed space. He's going to do more hurt than harm.
Yeah, and following that up, jumping in after that, we see him pull into the alleyway. And I will say, I didn't mention it last time, but you could kind of make the argument that maybe the angle, like how much of the Jaguar is being blocked by the SUV, could be cheated a little bit with the camera angles. Like maybe the camera is angled a little bit to one side, so it looks like it's blocked more than it really is.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I also think that I feel like I'm actually a little impressed that at Leonard, how he completely keeps his cool in this situation. Like, so much so that he's even, joking with him. It's like, Dodd asks where he got the car, and Leonard's like, why, are you interested in purchasing one for yourself?
I'm surprised he doesn't drive with the top down more. It is a rag top. Should be able to enjoy it.
And then we do get this moment with, with Dodd threatening him, and I like that there is the moment where, like, Leonard has to unlock the door to let him in, and then he kind of uses that distraction to go out the door as Dodd is going in. I think that is perfectly timed, and it makes sense. And then we get to see the kind of the payoff from the joke early in the movie, whenever Teddy asks him to roll up the window, and he sees that the window is broken, and so we kind of get the payoff for that moment, where we see the window getting broken in this moment.
And it's kind of nice too, because they kind of just get right to the point. He uses him coming into the car as a distraction, rather than, Dodd gets in the car, they have a conversation. All of a sudden, Dodd pulls a gun, they struggle, gun gets pointed at the roof, the gun goes off, and then Leonard punches Dodd, rendering him like just kind of immobilized for a second, and then takes off. It's nice to kind of skip all of that and just get right to the part where he takes off, because it's already, like you've talked about before, kind of a clunky, slow scene. It's nice to and we hit the ground running kind of thing.
And then I will also say that I do like the use of the car alarm going off, because I feel like that is the perfect soundtrack to kick off this chase scene with the, and then of course it's punctuated with the additional score to add up the tension and the dramatic tension of this chase scene, or at least the kickoff of this chase scene, because we really only in this scene we only get to see 10 seconds, like barely 10 seconds of it. And then that's that's really the end of this clip, and pretty much the end of this moment with Dodd. What do you think about Dodd as kind of this heavy? One thing that Christopher Nolan mentioned in the commentary is that the actor Callum Keith Rennie, he's actually, he's not the biggest guy, but they made him look pretty big and intimidating for Guy Ritchie, because he's almost even a little bit smaller than Guy Ritchie, but I think he pulls off the intimidation factor pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. You don't necessarily. I think he's a good example of you don't necessarily have to be physically imposing to pull off being intimidating. I mean, look at Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. There's a way that he can carry himself, and the use of facial expressions. I think he does a good job with it.
Before we wrap things up with you, Nick, there is something that I'm trying to remember to ask pretty much everybody their thoughts about one unanswered question within this movie, because we do get a lot of references to Sammy Jenkins, and at the end of the movie, Teddy questions his memory about Sammy Jenkins and puts in the idea that the story that Leonard tells about Sammy Jenkins is actually a story that he's telling about himself, and it's his wife that had the diabetes and needed the insulin shots, and she was the one that she survived the attack, and she was the one that tricked him into getting him to overinject her with the insulin. What's your thoughts about that theory? Do you lean one way or the other, or do you think it doesn't matter?
I think that, Guy Pearce is Sammy Jenkins. I think Sammy Jenkins is probably his real name, and the Leonard name comes from, that's probably Stephen Tobolowsky's actual character name. And maybe Stephen Tobolowsky's the insurance agent, and Guy Pearce is on the other side of that, but then when he's telling the story, he switches it around. To me, that seems most plausible.
Oh, that's interesting. That's it's the first time that we've heard that. So, do you have any is there anything that's to back you up on that, or is that just kind of what you think about it?
It's what I think about it, and this is going to sound really weird. There's a band called the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza, and they have a song called I Am Sammy Jenkins. So anytime I see it, I think of the film Memento. And then as I'm watching this, the song title just kept going through my mind. And I'm just like, you know what? Maybe this is it, because there's some lyrics to the song of take away all my words, all my thoughts, my hopes, my dreams, my go. As ink soaks through my skin, take away all my words. Trust no one. I use only strict discipline. The lyrics are just essentially lines from the film, and just to kind of hear it and go through it, albeit in a very intense heavy metal thrash kind of vibe, it's just kind of interesting to put the two together.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that song. I'll have to try and leave a note for myself to link that song. Or is there a music video, or is it just a song?
I don't think there's a music video. It's probably just a song that you'd be able to find.
Yeah, I'll have to try to remember to link that in the Facebook group when this episode goes out. So everyone else listening to this can check that out and hear it for themselves. But yeah, I haven't heard of that band, but that's interesting. I'm definitely going to look that up, and listen to that and check it out. But yeah, that's an interesting thought, and I know there's a lot of times with these kind of head trip movies where that type of question often enters my head, but I haven't really thought about that, with them completely switching roles. I have, I've definitely questioned whether or not Leonard Sammy Jenkins' story is actually his story, but I haven't thought about them like being fully switched roles or not. I think part of that is because Leonard does show a lot of attributes of what you would think he would have learned as the insurance investigator. He has like a lot of investigative qualities to him.
Very much so.
All right, but yeah, once again, thank you, Nick, for joining us for these past 4 weeks. And once again, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you online?
Absolutely. I've been a podcast guest extraordinaire. As of late, you can find me on episodes of Pop Art, Exploding Helicopter Podcast, Movies, Films, and Flicks, The Lambcast, and Movie Rob. He's finishing up his When Harry Met Sally, Minute by Minute. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on that as well. You can find me over on Mixcloud.com with Rehak Radio, and I recently joined Instagram. I'm that Rehak, ThatRehak. So far, it's just like pictures of landscapes and cats, and that's really it. Beer. Also pictures of beer.
All right. And thank you, as always, Eric, for joining me as my co-host throughout this whole season. And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm, as well as anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out, as well as have discussions about time loop movies and TV shows in general, and anything upcoming as well. And until next time, I assume I've already told you about Memento?
Only every time I see you.
I like your car.
Thank you.
Where'd you get it?
Are you interested in buying one?